Welcome back to another reading and correcting of Crimson by me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. Today, we are doing Chapter 7. Like every other time, the guard didn't bother looking up when Alex swept his ID and got the green light. No wonder Tristan had just walked in and caused trouble. If the guard had bothered looking up, he would have known the alien didn't belong here. This time, it wouldn't have helped. Alex did belong here, and he wasn't going to cause any trouble, he hoped. If his plan went well, he'd leave at the end of the day with everyone else, and no one would realize what he'd done until he was off planet. One of the supervisors eyed him when he walked by on his way to his desk, but he didn't say anything. Alex still had the company's president's protection for now. You okay? A woman on his left asked as he sat down. Yeah, I'm fine. Had a checkup this morning. Since everyone knew about his time at the hospital, by now he figured no one would question yet another visit. They're really that worried? Just what happened to you? He shrugged, took out the earpiece from the stand next to the monitor, and put it in his ear. Next, he slid the data chip in, having to force himself not to look at it. It wasn't unusual for someone to use a data chip. They all worked on coercion program at home. As far as anyone knew, that was just what this was. That's just what this was for. But telling himself that didn't help much. He couldn't help feeling like everyone knew there was nothing on it. That he wouldn't help that he wouldn't pull anything from it, but put his programs from the system on the chip. He looked up as he let the system know he was ready for an assignment, and groaned as he saw his interrogator walk down the aisle. When was she going to get fed up with this and move on to an actual criminal? Well, she wouldn't be his problem much longer. He began the attack as soon as the target came in, but he noticed that she slowed by his cubicle, probably glaring at his bag, cursing him for something he had no parts in. No parts in? Probably glaring at his back, cursing him for something he had no part in. Maybe he should lodge a complaint against her before leaving. Thumbing his nose at her was the least he could do as a response to what she put him through. Target wasn't very smart and only took him 15 minutes to talk and code into giving him the files he was after. As he packaged them, he transferred the programs he'd used to the chip, camouflaging the transfer among the other commands. Bringing program home was common. After all, unless he stayed late, that was the only place he could work on them. But because they were written for company use, he didn't technically own them, and while bringing one or two programs was common, he was planning on taking each and every program he'd written in his years here. With his interrogator still paying attention to him, she would question that and maybe even accuse him of stealing company property, and for once she'd be right. He was cautious with his transfer, hiding some with an assignment and others with information request or among the standard background file movement. He was done 2 hours before the end of the day, but he remained at his desk. He might have had the president's protection, but if he left after only a few hours of work, it would be noticed. And today of all day, he wanted to remain as unnoticed as possible. So he continued working. When the workday ended, he took the chip out of the monitor and removed his earpiece, but he didn't place it. When the workday ended, he took the chip out of the monitor and removed the earpiece. But didn't place that back in the holder. Let's go on the holder. He kept it in his hand as he stood in front of a crowd of other coercionists heading out of the building. The earpiece was the one piece of technology he couldn't get or recreate. It was proprietary technology which translated computer languages into something he could understand and his words back into the computer language. Lay people thought coercionists only reprogrammed computers, but they forgot that even the simplest of systems had an AI at its center, and those had to be convinced or tricked. until I think code. Coercion could be done without talking, but it was much, much more difficult that way. The throng of workers pushed him closer to the exit, and he looked around, trying to see if his interrogator was around. She didn't always see him out, but today would be the one day it could cause problem. The earpiece in his closed fist felt burning hot. He wondered if they had heat sensors and if it could tell what he was holding. The answer came when he stepped through the sensor and it beeped. Alex had only a moment to make his decision as the guard looked up in surprise and the other workers gasped. Even Alex could recall the last time one of the sensors had gone off that day. He bolted. He shoved the people out of his way and they were too surprised to resist. He eyed the door, still held open by people leaving. If they closed, they'd be trapped. Could the door be forced closed? It would hurt people, but he wasn't sure the company cared about that anymore. He kept shoving, but now people complained and tried to push him back. Someone behind yelled for him to stop. A man, so she wasn't involved yet. He had no doubt she'd find out shortly. This had to be what she'd been hoping for. Alex had just incriminated himself. If she caught him, she'd be able to do anything she wanted to him. Alex became more brutal in his shove as his anger increased. He wouldn't be stopped now. Jack depended on him. He thought he heard himself growl. Something caught his leg and he started going down. In a moment of panic, he almost let go of the earpiece to grab onto someone, but hands caught him and kept him from falling. "Are you okay?" Owen asked. Instead of answering, Alex shoved her aside. The commotion had caused the crowd by the door to stop and turn to see what was happening, and many of the doors were allowed to close. The crowd felt like it was fighting him now, trying to grab him, hold him back. People spoke and yelled, but he wasn't listening. Of the three doors directly ahead of them, one was now closed, and the other two were in the process of closing. He shoved the guy before him hard, not to push him aside, but back, forcing him into the woman behind him and she into someone else. No one fell, but they had to take a step back, and the closest to the door backed up into the doorway. Alex moved the obstruction aside and then pushed the man into the doorway out of the building. He didn't take the time to enjoy his freedom. He ran. He had to get home, change, grab his bag and the case, and make it to the port for a shuttle to the station. Each point was a place where he could be locked in if they realized that's where he was. He'd already taken care of his apartment. The system controlling the building was, well, dumb. Alex had only needed a couple of hours to change some of its personality and code so it wouldn't want to force lock any of the apartments or the doors leading outside. The coercionist could undo his work with ease, but it would give him the time he needed to get out. He ran past the first transit stop. He wasn't going to make it so easy on his pursuer as to take the direct line back to his place. He checked, and he could get there with only a few minutes delay by taking the line going towards the city center, leaving at the market, and getting onto the eastbound there. Alex was panting as he reached the stop, just as the transit tube pulled in. He sat down, his leg at side hurting, but smiled. He'd gotten away for now, but he really should have tried to get back into shape before this. He was cautious approaching his building. He didn't see anything that looked like someone keeping an eye out for him, but he had to be honest with himself and admit he had no idea what that would look like. He entered the building and everything looked and felt normal. He knew he should take the stairs, but 15 flights were daunting. So he risked the elevator, knowing he hadn't thought of to arrange things so they couldn't be controlled. He knew the three who got in with him by sight, an older couple who had worked at Luminex, from snippets of conversation he caught over the years, and a student who the company was sending to a specialized school for one thing or another. The student stepped off on the 11th floor, and the couple continued on after Alex exited on his floor. Everything looked fine there. Everything looked fine there, too. Once in his apartment, he took a moment to catch his breath, then realized how exhausted being on the run was. Vids made it look so easy. Forced himself to move. He couldn't be locked in his apartment. But if he didn't hurry, the doors leaving the building could be surrounded. which would be as good as if they were locked. Pulled off his clothes on his way to the bedroom, not caring where they fell. Now was no longer the time to care about neatness, only expediency. Put on loose pants made of a shimmery material. Thought the thing were gaudy, but they were all the rage with kids these days. Something about being bright and out there, whatever that meant. He was putting on a gray shirt when a voice resounded through the apartment. Alexander, the man said. Alex looked around both for who had spoken and for something to use to defend himself. He grabbed a shoe, and only then recognized Emerald's voice. He looked out the bedroom and into the living room. The screen was off, but it had to be where the voice had come from. He didn't say anything, as he gave his heart a moment to calm down before letting go of his weapon and getting back to dressing. He threw a hooded jacket over the shirt in the same material as the pants. Alexander, why are you doing this? The shoes were back on. The shoes were black. The salesperson had explained why, even though he hadn't asked, but he hadn't paid attention. Please, Alex, talk to me. Why did you steal from me after everything I did to make your return smooth? Right, Alex replied sarcastically, like you actually give a damn what happens to me. The shoes formed to his feet as soon as they were on. Do you even know what your company did to me for absolutely no reason? I do. I had a long talk with Catherine. Alex frowned, trying to place the name. Who? The head of security Tristan murdered was her husband. I had nothing to do with that. I know. You were a victim, like so many people Tristan leaves in his wake. That's why I did what I did for you. We're a family. It's my duty to... Bullshit. You don't care about me. Your vaunted company only cares about that we do our job. The moment it thinks we're going to be a problem, it removes us. You think I haven't heard about the other people disappearing? You think the others don't realize that only the troublemakers stop coming to work? That was the previous president. I don't allow, no. Tell yourself that if you want, but that's how your company works. So long as we're useful, we're family. But the moment one of the higher up no longer likes what we're doing, Alex cursed, didn't have time to engage in conversation. He left the room, grabbed his backpack with his clothing, and the few possessions that mattered to him, as well as the case containing the defender. He headed for the door. This would be a different picture. Alex, if you leave like this, I won't be able to protect you anymore. You won't be able to come back to work. You think I even want to go back there? Why, Alex? Just tell me why you're doing this. Alex paused at the door, hand near the release. I didn't have time for this, he repeated to himself. I've delayed them, Emerald said, as if he'd read his mind. We have a few more minutes. There are two reasons, he said, realizing he wanted to explain it to the man. The first one is that I don't feel safe in your company anymore. I haven't since that first day I came back. And that woman, Catherine, she keeps showing up to watch me. I didn't know. I wish you had told me. I'll shrug. The second is that I have to go rescue Jack. Alex, you know there is no Jack. You read Tristan's file. It's what he does. He becomes someone else so he can use the people around him. No. Alex made his voice first. I refuse to believe that. There's no way that monster could be as kind and loving as Jack was. You, Alex, this course you are embarking on, it will only lead to your death. Tristan will not welcome you. I don't care. Don't you get it? Without Jack, I have no reason to live anymore. The silence stretched for a long time. Take the far left elevator into the basement. Listen. The third door on the right, when you exit, will open onto a corridor that connects to the neighboring building. Security doesn't know about it. You'll be able to exit without any of them noticing. I hope you come to your senses before you find Tristan, Alex. The silence that followed had the finality of a close connection. This concludes Chapter 7 of Crimson. If you are enjoying this, give it a like. You want to know when the next one's going to be? Share. No, if you want to know when it's going to be, subscribe, hit the bell, share it with your friends so more people can enjoy this. If you want to read the whole book as well as the rest of the series, it is available on all major retail stores. There's a link in the notes for that. There's also a link to my Patreon should you want to support me, and one to my Twitch should you want to watch me record these live as well as do my writing. For that, I shall wish you a good day.